Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Veterans Voices. Tonight's show is titled A Taste of Home Overseas, and we'll be talking with veterans and their supporters about when they felt most connected to home and what it meant to them to be supported during their service to our country. We appreciate you being with us, and we'll be right back with our first guests. Welcome. I'm Nathan Johnson, the Contra Costa County Veterans Service Officer, and I'm joined by my co-host and Gold Star father, Kevin Graves.
Thank you, Nathan. It's good to be here. Veterans Voices is committed to serving the community by educating our viewers about veterans issues and improving access to resources for vets and their families. Our hope is to make television part of the solution.
If you're watching tonight and want to join our conversation on the topic of a taste of home overseas, and we do want you to join. This conversation can't be had without you. So please call us right now. Our phone lines are open, and we encourage you to call in. You can also send us an email at veteransvoices@contracostatv.org or connect with us right now on Facebook at Veterans Voices 1. Now, we'd like to welcome guests Steve Burchick and Jana Peterson to the show. Welcome, folks.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Happy to be here.
So this is an important conversation to have. Home is sometimes a long ways away from places like Vietnam and Korea and Iraq and Afghanistan, but it's a place that we miss a lot when we're gone. And we're gone for sometimes a year or 6 months, a long time. So before we get started on this conversation, real briefly, Jana, just introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm part of a large group of Red Cross gals that were all college grads that wanted to be of service. And so my original thought was to go to Korea for a full year.
Okay.
And then but I did transfer to Vietnam
To
as
Vietnam.
well. Yeah.
And during the war.
Yes,
Okay.
right, in 65 and 66.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Steve, you've been on the show plenty of times, and you're also an associate producer on the show, but introduce yourself to our audience as well.
I'm Steve Burchick. I'm a Vietnam veteran and thought this would be a good topic and happy to share thoughts on the things that broke up the danger, but more often the monotony and the tediousness of combat.
When did you serve over there, Steve?
I was there June 68 to June 69.
And so get started with that, Steve. I mean, tell us a little bit about, what broke up the monotony and what little pieces of, treasure that you found really reminded you of home or gave you a taste of home.
There were several things. One was USO centers. We didn't go to them very often. We were a field unit, but occasionally we'd have 2 or 3 hours. There was a USO center in Zion, and we got to go there and check out, play a piano or chat with somebody.
So we have some photos that we're going to show with tonight's episode. So as you're talking about this, Stephen, continue on. We have photo 32 here where a man is sitting at the piano and playing. So these are the USO centers. Were they located everywhere, or was it a special time designated that you could go visit these centers?
They were fixed locations in Vietnam. One of the shots was Zion near Saigon. The other one was in Saigon near the Tan Son Nhut Air Base. But there are others around the country. In addition to those, we also were lucky enough to get occasional visits from the USO tours.
So photo 12 here is, who's this man, photo 12? He's paying a visit to you guys. He's somewhat famous, right?
Very famous, actually. That's Joey Bishop, a famous comedian, actor. And we were kind of shocked. Some of us were in the base, a couple others were coming in from a patrol. And Joey Bishop and Tippi Hedren, the actress who was in the movie The Birds, they both came in unannounced, spent an hour or so wandering around. You could chat with them, take a picture with them. And they were wonderful. We really appreciated it, and the fact that it was a surprise made it even a little bit better.
So I never got to visit a USO center, but I remember Conan O'Brien came and visited us when we were in Kuwait on our way out of Iraq. And it was very special to have someone of a celebrity status take the time and come over and visit us and entertain us. But Jana, you did that every day at these USO centers, and we've got some pictures of some of these USO centers. Picture number 109 and 104 showed sometimes these facilities were very rugged, but you guys built, why did you build these facilities? What was
in Vietnam, actually, what we were doing is we're more Red Cross, and so we had built a 50 by 100 foot building that was marvelous. I mean, it was just, that's the one that's showing right now. And we did a lot of different things in Vietnam than we did in Korea. And one of those things is that we had a set where we'd have talent shows, we would have opportunities for, we had a piano, we had you know, ping pong tables. We had a variety of different puzzles and things, and games as well. But we also went out into the community, out into the area of Vietnam, and we provided programs to guys, whether they were in mess halls or they were, you know, out by a ship on a Navy ship or whatever that was. And we would provide programs for them that were participatory and meant to just remind them that there are some folks that look, you know, maybe I look like their next door neighbor or their best friend or whatever that was. So yeah, it was great.
Your career started though in this back in Korea, not during the war, but just in Korea with our troops that were still serving in South Korea.
That's right.
And tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, I was a sociology major, and I was very idealistic, thinking I was going to save the world. So I wanted to go to Korea. And because I knew at the time there was no, quotes, active war, I realized that there were, you know, we were being cautious. But I thought, well, I can go because I was an anti-war activist, a very strong one in college. And I was in Korea just a few months. We always traveled in 3/4-ton trucks, and we went usually in pairs with our programs. But one of the things, after a few months of being in Korea, I was asked if I'd like to help start the program for the Red Cross in Vietnam. And because I was an anti-war really activist, I decided I really wasn't so sure I wanted to do that, because would that be supporting the war? But what I recognized fairly quickly is that even the guys in Korea, as well as Vietnam, didn't want to be there. And I was really there to support the troops. I wasn't there to support the war. Yeah. So then I said, I will go. I think
that's a very important distinction. Absolutely. I think that's what some of us forget in today's world, even with our boys that are over still in Afghanistan. Right. And that is that we need to support them for what the decisions they've made. These guys volunteered in Vietnam. They were forced to go there, but these guys are volunteering, and to not support them because of whether it's right or wrong, that's not what their mission is. And I think it's very interesting that you had made that decision. I really applaud that, because I think it's very important.
I bet they really appreciate it. Every day they probably didn't know.
The difference you made when you didn't think you could make a difference. I think that's awesome.
So I want to take just a moment to re-invite our audience to participate in tonight's show. We're talking about a taste from home overseas. If you have been overseas, you've been in the military, maybe you're in the military today, and if you can share a story with us about what brought you a taste of home, maybe it was being able to make phone calls or receive letters or care packages, or a celebrity visited you, or maybe you went to a USO center or a Red Cross center like Jana participated in and supported. I also want to introduce that we had some callers call in prior to this show. A lot of folks are really interested in tonight's topic, and they couldn't call in during the live broadcast, but they called in before tonight's show. So we have two calls that we'll share, and so if we could roll our first call, we'll listen to that.
My name is Raymond La Rochelle. In 1967, I was Navy pilot stationed in Dogtown, which was actually 9th Division Base Camp. But anyway, in late 67, USA brought Martha Ray in to do the Hello Dolly show. Unfortunately, their props and costumes got waylaid and didn't make it in time for the show. But they went ahead anyway and did it all in fatigue. And it was fantastic. They were so good and so enthusiastic. Unbeknownst to most people, after the show, Martha Ray went over to Third Search Hospital, and being a former RN in another life, volunteered her services. She wrote letters for troops. She emptied bedpans, changed dressing, whatever was needed. Spent the whole night and didn't leave until morning. I don't know when this lady got sleep, but she was absolutely amazing. Very uplifting.
He's talking about Martha Ray.
Okay, that was a little quiet. We need to maybe play the second one a little louder. But back to the Mars calls, Steve, if you can cover that. And I can hear myself in the studio right now. Go ahead, sir.
The Mars call was a system set up where if you were lucky enough, you could get to a major base, hook up, get in line. When you got a chance to call, you picked up the phone. Then it went on shortwave or ham radio operators overseas from Vietnam, connected back into the U.S. When they received the call, they would connect. In my case, somebody in Washington got the call, transmitted it to somebody in Pennsylvania. Then they would do a collect call on a landline to my mom or my fiance. The only thing was, since it was shortwave, it was one direction. So I would say, hey mom, things are going good, we're getting plenty to eat, over. And then she would say, hey, I'm glad to hear that, over. And that's the way the conversation went.
So I think we have some B-roll footage of these Mars calls. And we also have the second call. What was it like what did it feel like to make these calls? To be somewhere so far off and to be in a world that was maybe at times chaotic or maybe you were missing home. What was it like to reconnect with your family and hear how they were doing or share with them a little bit about how you were doing?
It was absolutely fantastic. Once again, we were in remote areas, so I think I made 3 or 4 calls in the course of a year.
Yeah.
So they were pretty special.
Yeah.
The last one was the most special. I was down to 3 weeks, and my fiance and I had agreed to get married. So in the space of 4 or 5 minutes, we're trying to finalize the details on the church, the reception, and the guest list.
Over.
Jenna,
How many people were involved in your program? How many Red Cross girls were there that were that had signed up for this hazard duty, actually?
Actually, in Korea, we had about 52 girls at about 7 different locations. And in Vietnam, gosh, I don't know. I think it was probably about the same eventually. But we started off pretty small with just a couple of units, and I was in the Trang in Vietnam. And each unit had about 5 to 6 girls. 2 of us would be going out into A camps or B camps or whatever, or out to in a variety of different places within Vietnam to take our programs or to just chat with the guys. And then the others would stay in our recreation center, and we'd have programs or we'd have games lined up for the guys or talent shows or those kinds of things.
What did it feel like to be a part of that, to be connecting with these men or women? And what were some of the things that they told you when they felt maybe connected to someone who was represented what home was like?
Right.
Maybe, you know.
I think one of the things I discovered is I have a universal face. And so a number of people said, oh, you look just like my neighbor, or you look like my girlfriend, or you look like my aunt.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid.
Yeah.
But
right.
yeah, so but what I love the most is when I had one-on-one conversations with the guys. And they would be able to just chat with just, another American and just tell us, how they were feeling about it. It could be very sad or it could be happy.
Yeah. Let's play our second call, if we have that in the queue to play.
Hi, I didn't get to see any USO when I was in Vietnam or overseas, but I did have an episode when I was in the reserves. I was doing a 2-week manual work party in Long Beach. And, of course, it was during Christmas because I was in school. And it was very nice to be able to see the lights on and a little bit of a Christmas spirit at the local USO. I remember it was, I believe, across the street from the Queen Mary. And a couple of us went in there and just spent a few minutes having that Christmas spirit. Otherwise, we were just working. Thank you. Hopefully you have a good show. This is Dennis Giacobelli.
Well, thank you, Dennis, and thank you to our other caller for leaving these very important experiences with us by phone. And thank you, Jana, and thank you, Steve. I think what we're getting here is that a taste of home sometimes came from the connections to people who came from home and operated these Red Cross centers and these USO centers and the celebrities who took their time to bring a little bit of laughter, a little bit of comfort into our lives overseas. So thank you both for being guests on the show. We're going to move on with this segment and talk a lot more about this. And thank you for staying with us. Are you out there with your own experiences of feeling connected to home while you were serving? We encourage you to call in. Be a part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. You can call in right now at 925-313-1170. Stay with us. Next up, Ryan Berg had a chance to connect with veterans about a taste of a home at the Martinez VA Clinic in our Vet on the Street segment. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Ryan Berg. Welcome to another segment of Vet on the Street. I'm here at the VA Clinic in Martinez, California, here asking people questions about when they felt most connected to home while in the service or deployed. When did you feel most connected to home while you were in the service?
I guess it was when I was feeling lonely, and I felt like I wanted to return to where I had been before, because it was a new environment, strange environment, and a little scary at that age.
So what connected you to home? What types of things? Was there any kind of like care packages, or what brought you closer to home while you were away?
Actually, it was my memories. My memories of being with my dog and in the woods and running around in the mountains and going down to the river and things like that.
Were there moments when you were gone that a taste of home kind of warmed you up a little bit or helped you feel, comfortable?
No.
Can you think for a moment about a time when you felt most connected to home while you were in the military or deployed?
It was always nice to get letters, from family members and loved ones at home. That was look forward to. We really look forward to that.
What do you think? What's the importance of having things that connect us to home when we're in the military or deployed?
I think the importance is that you don't have to just concentrate on those things that are around you. Some of them dangerous, some of them unknown to you. Some of them you're not even used to experiencing that.
What's your favorite memory of being in Panama?
The ladies, some beautiful women, and I was a young man and I had fun. Yeah, that's my favorite memories of being in Panama.
The girls down south, I like the girls down south.
Red Cross girls actually used to come to Vietnam and support the troops by playing a variety of games and just their presence there. Yeah. So it sounds like the girls down south for you was somewhat of a morale booster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, women always boost men's morale, I think.
So when you were in the service or deployed, what kinds of things kept you connected to home?
Well, at the time we didn't have internet or nothing like that, so it was a lot of letters and food boxes. They were very, very handy. That's about it. The communication you get back when I was in the Army was mostly like you can get a phone call, letters, food boxes. Pretty much being away from your family for years and years does put a hardship on your mind.
What's the importance of remaining connected to home when you're in the service or deployed?
I think it's just like keeping your mind and your body right, because if you don't, I've seen a lot of soldiers fall just because they miss home. I've seen a lot of soldiers cry. Big dudes, those hoorah dudes? Yeah, they start crying when it comes down to go to war. Only thing that makes it good is you can find friends in the Army that are from your area, or just soldiers keep soldiers going. That's all I can say.
Well said. When did you feel most connected to home while you...
Hope came through.
Yeah, Bob Hope.
And we were showing his plane while he was doing the show. So I missed the show. I didn't get to see the show, but I got to see Bob Hope.
What kept you connected to home when you were overseas, sir?
Just the capability of being able to talk to my family, because we could do shortwave radio communication. So I could talk to my family by shortwave. It took like 3 days to get it all set up. So my mom would be there, and then over.
Oh yeah, the Mars call, right? Yeah. So you got to talk to your family using the Mars system.
Yeah. So that was probably about the best time.
But what other types of things help you feel connected to home or help remind you of home?
Just all the letters and everything I got from home, the packages I got from home.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. We're now joined by Loretta Masnada, Stacy Nigro, and Ryan Rector. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure
Thank
to
you.
be here.
So we've been having a conversation about a taste from home, and all of you have been involved in one way or another of either sending a taste of home or receiving a taste of home, maybe in a box or a letter and such. But before we talk about that, very quickly, introduce yourselves.
Hey, my name is Loretta Masnada. I'm the proud mother of an active duty Marine Corps Staff Sergeant, and I'm a member of the Contra Costa Blue Star Moms, and I have been the care package coordinator for 7.5 years.
Thank you.
Stacy?
I'm Stacy Nigro, and I have an active duty Navy Corpsman, and I'm president of Chapter 101 Blue Star Moms in Danville.
I'm Ryan Rector. I'm a Marine Corps veteran from 2009 to 17. I was an 0341 infantryman, and I was also a Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center instructor for the second half of my career in the Marine Corps. And I'm a student veteran now.
So Ryan, tell us a little bit about your experience with either your experience when you were deployed, and how did you find a taste of home?
Well, we were lucky enough to get the internet after a little while. I mean, it took, halfway through both of my deployments, but we ended up getting it. Until then, we had sat phones, and then we would get letters, and USO packages were really nice. But we'd also get care packages from our families, which more often than not is what we actually received instead of USO. I mean, that's what I got mostly, So.
Because they were personally addressed to you and no one else could grab them before you got them, I guess, huh?
That's it right there, yeah.
So this is in Afghanistan. You're time zones away from your family, but you're still connected to them through social media and through the internet?
Yeah, it was really nice to be connected on the internet in the second half. I mean, we would take a patrol and be able to go send an email or get on Facebook at our company positions, but before then it was sat phones and letter mail and boxes from our families, so it was really nice.
Of all of those, what was the most special, do you think? A sat phone is a satellite phone, right? Mm-hmm. It's just for our audience's understanding, but which of those, a sat phone call, a care package, a letter, or a Facebook message, what felt maybe the most special to you?
I think the sat phone, because it was a lot more intimate. You had to fight with the signal, stand on top of Humvees, and risk yourself kind of standing over the wall of the patrol base. So it was a lot more intimate and a lot more work you had to put into it. But what meant the most, I think, was getting those letters and those little surprises in the care packages from the family. And then the USO did a really good job, and Blue Star Moms and all the other organizations that would send us care packages. They did a good job of making it intimate and seem like they actually cared about us. It wasn't just a bunch of stuff put in a box. Sometimes they'd paint and draw on the lid on the inside, so it'd surprise you. You get little paintings and stuff. So it was really nice to get that and it not just be a generic box that somebody just dumped a bunch of stuff in.
So Loretta, for 7 years you were the coordinator for care packages that were shipped overseas. Why was that important to you? That's quite a while to take on that responsibility.
Well, it's important because, we call it mom in a box. And, my son has deployed and I know what it meant to him. And we know what it means to them, especially when we get the thank you notes back and they tell us exactly how much it meant, and it makes you want to go out and pack some more care packages and send it to them.
Yeah. So I'm, as you said, mom in a box, I kind of got the visual of you actually like jumping out of a box and surprising your son.
That would be nice.
Yeah, which would be a lot of fun.
We can't do that.
You can't do that. So what makes it mom in a box? What part of you goes into that box that on the other end you would hope that your son would open it up and feel that?
Well, because I know what he wants in a package, and in fact, he's been our consultant in changing things that go into the care packages. For instance, when he deployed the first time, he asked me to send him pasta, canned pasta. It became a family joke because we are Italian. We don't do canned pasta, but everybody in my family went out and bought a bunch of cans. We sent it to him, and we now include those in all of our care packages, or chili or stew, something like that.
Yeah.
Things that we know he wanted, and he we know that the others will appreciate it too.
Yeah.
And Stacy, your chapter does a lot of the same thing. In fact, I've actually helped pack for the 101 chapter years ago at the elementary school. Thousands of boxes got packed in a day. Tell us a little bit about what it means to you and what you think it means to those that receive them.
Well, to receive them, I know that they're very appreciative. And our chapter, when we send a box, when we get an address to send it to, we always try to send them at least 4 to 8 boxes so that they can share it with the others that they're with that might not get a box. There's a lot that they don't hear from family when they're out on deployment.
Right.
We want them to know that we're here for them.
Okay.
And so that they always feel connected to home.
So you see as what you're doing to either supplement what the families are able to send, or for the family members who can't send anything at all, you're filling that gap and providing something special for them.
A lot of the younger families, they don't have the money to send the care packages.
It's expensive, I would
Our
imagine.
biggest fee is the postage.
Yeah.
And I think for some of the families of some of the service members, it's just hard enough for them dealing with the separation. The last thing they're thinking, I mean, it's just hard. And to put something together to send over there because of the concern and the worry and all the things that go along with having, as you guys well know, of having somebody deployed. It's really interesting. When my son was over there, he would talk about receiving things from home. But it was funny when Steve was here. I should have brought it up. But Montgomery Gentry showed up at their camp one day, and there was only about 20 of them there because there's 100 guys. He was an MP, so they were doing some security details, and they put on a concert for like 20 people, and they all sat around on all the vehicles, and they were there for a couple, 3 hours, and he was so proud of that and so happy to have that connection. Took pictures, sent the pictures home, and I was fortunate in that Joey had access to communications, and I spoke mostly on the phone to him. Did some emailing, but that was pre-Facebook, so there wasn't much social media going on. So things have evolved also, but I know that that getting those personal things and the special notes, the notes on the flaps that you guys do.
I remember getting them when I was deployed. You know, my first time I was on ship most of the time, so these things would come on a pretty regular basis. The second time during the invasion, they would come sporadically, and sometimes they didn't come at all. But they felt, even if it was a letter, it felt like it was Christmas when you got it. And so, Ryan, I'm just wondering, you know, when you got these letters and when you got these packages, were they something that you were able to open up right away and dig into, or was it something you just kind of set aside and maybe you get to it later? What was it like to get these, and how close did you pay attention to them, and considering that there's a lot of other important responsibilities that you had?
Well, luckily, the responsibilities I had was post and patrol, and there was a lot of downtime in between that. So I got to pay a lot of attention to the things that I received and the different items that were in them. So it was really nice to receive those things, and basically, you know, a lot of the times we would get some stuff that was broken, and it was unfortunate that somebody's box was destroyed. So those of us that got an abundance of items were able to share in the wealth. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, I mean, I remember getting a letter, and I think after I'd read it, I'd keep it in my pocket. You know, like it was, you know, sometimes you could read it right away. Sometimes you had to wait till a little bit later. But opening it up and reading it, of course, it was the words that were in there that were important to you, but it was just also that that you had part of this to stay connected to until you got the next letter. You know, and so I'd put them in my little cargo pocket and just kind of pull it out every once in a while. And you know, you can't really put a package in your pocket, but maybe you could take some of the pieces of what came in that package and put it in your pocket. So how do you think that care packages, how do you think that little items, why do you think that's important? I mean, our military is able to provide these things for the service members, right? I mean, our military's got chow halls and commissaries and PXs and such. So, you know, there's an idea that we can go out and buy these things ourselves when we're deployed overseas, but there must be a bigger reason why a new pair of socks or some beef jerky is really needed to provide this taste of home. Any thoughts on that at all? I mean,
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because somebody here assembled it and thought about them.
Okay.
And put their care into it.
Right.
And you know, several times you've mentioned the notes and cards. When we receive thank yous, that is one of the things most often mentioned, the notes and cards written by students, high schoolers, adults.
Yeah.
And our deployed troops then know somebody here was thinking about them and sending them their best wishes.
Yep, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think it's a great way for us to pay attention to our service members. Stacey, you're kind of nodding your head. Any thoughts on that? We're paying attention, but sometimes we kind of get distracted and focused on our lives here, and this is a way that we say, hey, you're still on our minds.
Yeah, no, I think it's extremely important for them. And, you know, we do our care package drives like at Safeway, and the only reason why we continue to do that is to make sure the community is remembering about them as well, and that they can contribute and write cards and notes.
So we have.
I think that's important because you know, when I'm not deployed, but for those that do, I know that they, you know, most of our service members don't feel like anybody even knows they're there. And let's face it, most of America doesn't realize that we're still at war. I know we're preaching to our choir within our own audience here, but it's a fact that a good portion of the United States doesn't even realize that we're in the longest war that we've been in our history.
So we have just a few seconds here. So if I could get one comment from you, Ryan, on what would you recommend to someone who's trying to send a taste of home overseas? What could be the best thing that they do?
I would say put some variety in it and make it special. You know, don't make it something predictable, because there's a lot of things you can just go into Walmart or Target and kind of see in the toiletry section and throw it in there because it's little travel stuff. So.
Now, I understand. I understand. There's some things you shouldn't send. You shouldn't send. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything. Anything explosive. Don't send that. And anything that you couldn't buy in a store here in the States, definitely don't send that. And alcohol. Don't send alcohol overseas. It's just a bad thing. I mean, there's probably some people yelling at me, but
And although you're sending it to someone who's 21 years old, think of them as being 5 years old. Maybe don't send anything inappropriate, right?
Yep.
Okay, they call it contraband. So. All right. Well, thank you so much.
It's been awesome having you guys here, and thank you for everything you're doing to send that taste of home, and thank you for your service, Ryan. Appreciate it. Please stay with us. Next up, we'll be talking with a World Airways pilot and flight attendant about their experience during Vietnam. We'll be right back. Thank you for watching Veterans Voices tonight. I'd like to welcome Yolanda Vega and Warren Vest to the show. Hi.
Hi.
Why don't you briefly introduce yourselves to our audience? Yolanda?
My name is Yolanda Vega. I'm a Gold Star mother. My experience in Vietnam is I was a flight attendant based at Yokota Air Base for 3 years, from 1972 to 1975.
Warren?
I'm Warren Vest. I'm a retired airline captain. Spent 40 years with the World Airways, of which many years involved in Vietnam.
And a veteran as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Nathan, I think we have a Facebook
Yeah,
message.
we have a
you may
Facebook
wanna
message
look at
from
here.
Martin Devanuta, an Air Force veteran. And Martin says that his favorite memory was that he visited the USO Center at Tansanute Air Base every night while on TDY, which is temporary duty, to have the most delicious hamburgers that reminded me of home. Well, Martin, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like Air Force is a good branch of service to join. You get to have a hamburger every night. So that's great. And I think it shows that, you know, a taste of home could be the food that they also serve overseas in some of these USO centers. And it's probably nothing better than probably a hamburger after you've been eating, C rations and MREs out in the field, or maybe haven't eaten for a day or two.
So you, for many of our returning service members during the Vietnam era, you guys were the first ones to see these guys when they're heading back home. You were the first taste of home that they saw as they got on the plane to come home, either after their tour. So what was that experience like for you guys?
Well, you never had to worry about a delay because they were on the airplane as soon as you let them out of the terminal.
Right. Hurry up and sit down in your seats. We're going somewhere special.
Right.
Just get us out of here, huh?
Right. Right. They would get on the airplane, they would put their safety belts on, ready to go. There wasn't any problem at all with them.
So what an important moment for them to have, right? They've been waiting for that moment maybe a year, 13 months. So what would you do? I mean, obviously you had a job to do. Fly the plane, you know, as a flight attendant, you know, safely make sure they're strapped in, doors are shut. But what would you do to help them experience that they were going back home?
Well, I was based in Yokota. I was there for 3 years, so I would fly out of Yokota Air Base and fly into Vietnam and back again. I didn't go back to the United States. I didn't go stateside. And they had, their taste of home with me was more a person to speak with, a person to let them know that I was afraid with them. I mean, I would sit on the jump seat and we were flying to Vietnam or we were flying to Korea, Taiwan, in some cases Laos and Cambodia. And I would just reach out from my jump seat and hold their hand too. And I'm with you. And as they would walk out the door, going to their assignment, I would say to them, I'll be here when you come back. I'll be here waiting for you.
You know, that's important. I think we were focusing on the return trip back home, but a taste of home was coming at a time which they probably needed it most. They were on their way to Vietnam or another place overseas in which they were probably already starting to miss home and possibly feeling lonely. So I think that's incredible. Did many of them need that? Do you feel that they really connected with that?
They were babies.
Yeah.
You know, they were babies. I was a baby too.
Yeah.
And very, very naive about what was going on.
Yeah.
There was a war, as Jana had said, but I was there for them. I didn't think about the war. I thought of them. So whenever we would land, regardless if we were at Clark or Taiwan, Laos, Cambodia, we had leftover food. I would pack it into a bag, and then I would give it to the cleaners, and I would say, take this to our boys, take it home. So if they were out in the field, they would have whatever we had on the airplane.
You know, I think it's our Vietnam vets are probably out there saying, "Hey guys, we didn't even, you know, it was a different war. It was a different time. That wasn't the time and basic training that our guys get today. They were just put on a plane and sent to war. You know, they were drafted, and I don't know how long their basic was, but it was relatively short. It's a different war than we fight today, and they didn't know what they were getting into. They were just following orders."
What about you, Warren? I mean, you're in command of this aircraft, and obviously you're bringing them a taste of home as you're taking them back. But were you allowed to play music or anything on this plane? Anything special to get these men and women excited about this journey that they were taking?
Back in the early days, excuse me, we didn't have a lot of in-flight entertainment, so the flight attendants took care of that. But we didn't have you know, in-flight entertainment or movies. back in those days. The main thing was coming back. They were so happy. The other thing I think that was really appreciated by all the guys who were over there, where we ran R&R flights.
Oh, okay.
To Sydney, Australia, Honolulu, and it was a real break for them to get out of Vietnam for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was usually about a couple weeks long, typically.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been told you have a photo of one of the jets in your scrapbook there. I don't know if you want to hold that up. And
This is the DC-8.
Okay.
We flew 727s.
Okay.
But this is the DC-8 from World Airways.
Probably the most beautiful airplane these men and women had ever seen before. And so as this plane would take off or land, was there any reaction from them? Were any of them shouting out or happy or applauding or anything? Yeah.
Even when the flights out of Vietnam would normally come out of several places in Vietnam. First stop would be Yokota Air Base in Japan. And they were all excited just to get there.
Yeah.
But then from there, it was like a 9.5-hour flight from Yokota to Travis.
Yeah. You know, my experience...
I've seen guys get off the airplanes in Travis and get down and kiss the ground.
Oh, wow. Yeah. My experience leaving Iraq in 2003, we ended up going out of Iraq through Kuwait, and we got on a United Airlines Boeing 747, probably the plane that I loved since I was a kid. Had never flown on one of these planes before, had never gotten close to one before. And I remember sitting on this Boeing 747 flying in this gigantic plane, sitting business class, and the flight attendants and the pilots seemed very happy to see us. Although I'm sure they had done hundreds or thousands of flights before. It's like we were distinguished guests or we were VIPs. How did you maintain, if at all, some form of compassion or connection to these folks, although you had probably done hundreds of these flights?
Well, there was, excuse me, a very close relationship between World Airways and everybody that served in Vietnam. We took so many people over there. We were so involved within the country. We flew from 1967 until the end of the war. We flew the Stars and Stripes 6 days a week, delivered in Vietnam. Mr. Daly was very, very involved, did a lot of charitable stuff. I remember Christmas one year, he rounded up some celebrities from Hollywood, and we took a 707 that was a cargo configuration, loaded it up full of Christmas trees, and flew it all the way from Travis, Yokota, to Cameron Bay.
Wow.
And Fess Parker, he was on that trip. And,
so incredible. It wasn't just the passengers that you were giving a taste of home to. You were bringing some of these very special things, Christmas trees and turkey dinners, I heard earlier.
For Thanksgiving.
Wow. Yeah, of course these things have to get over there in a timely manner. You can't put a Christmas tree on a ship and expect it to make it to Vietnam and still be green and be fresh. So you had to get these things over there in a couple of hours.
And we had such a close relationship, but besides the regular R&R flights that were paid for by the government, Mr. Daly set up an R&R flight from Saigon to Chicago. And the GIs, if they wanted to go on and get a little leave and go, was $250 round trip from Saigon to Chicago.
Wow, and that's well below the price that you would normally pay for that.
So I went over in the early 70s and became the vice president of the Far East.
Yeah.
So I was in charge of Vietnam and all that area.
Yeah.
So I had 50 salesmen.
Wow, working out there.
Troops.
We just have a minute, and I just want to ask, we just have about 30 seconds, actually. How do you guys stay connected to each other? Because it seems that this experience was very unique. So how do you guys stay connected, Yolanda?
Oh, well, World Airways, we have a reunion every year. And we have about 100 people who show up either in Las Vegas or here in the Bay Area. We have luncheons. We've got World Airways flight attendants. We get together on a weekly basis. We take care of each other. We became family. We didn't know it at that time, but and as Captain Vest said, our entertainment for the flight attendants entertained the troops when they would go into the O Club. We danced with them.
Well, you know, I think it's a testimony to Mr. Daly. He was an awesome patriot, and he gave a lot of his own time and money to help our troops. Want to thank you guys for being here tonight. Thank you for sharing those stories. It was a very important thing that you did. Thank you for your service to our troops, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we had a chance to speak with a member of Army Special Services, Kathleen Cordova, last week, so please enjoy this pre-recorded interview with her. I'm here with Steve Burchick and Kathleen Cordova. Kathleen, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
So, Kathleen, you were a civilian serving in the Army Special Services during Vietnam. When were you in Vietnam?
I was there in 1968 and 69 for about 15 months. I extended for a while waiting for my turtle. The turtle was your replacement. We called them turtles because they took so long to get there.
Oh, okay.
And what areas of Vietnam did you serve in?
Let's see, my first assignment was in Tay Ninh, which was along the Cambodian border. Then I was sent to Zion near Saigon, and then the last few months I was in Vinh Long in the Mekong Delta.
By the way, you also the author of a book, Round Eye and a World of Hurt.
Yeah, a short story. Mm-hmm.
And when did you write that, and what was the reaction to it?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when I wrote it, but it got published in a book called Times They Were A-Changing, Women Remember the 60s. And I got quite a bit of response from it because a lot of people didn't know that there were American women in Vietnam.
Kathleen, you were a civilian with the Army Special Services. What was your primary role, being that you weren't in the military, but you were in a supportive role?
Yeah, I guess I would say that our mission there was to support the troops, and you know, the doctors and nurses were there to take care of their physical wounds, and we were there to try and provide them some kind of rest and respite from the stress of war.
The service clubs that you worked at, were they open to all ranks? How did that work?
No, the service clubs were recreation centers, and they were for enlisted personnel only. And they weren't bars. We didn't serve alcohol or anything like that. But on occasion, we did have, on special occasions, we would have what we called officer coffee calls, and we would invite the unit officers to come. But most of the time it was open, you know, 10 to 10 every day, 7 days a week, and it was just for the enlisted personnel.
So what would you do? What were some of the activities that you would facilitate, or what were some of the ways that you would try to create some respite for them and help them relax from some of their stressful combat experiences or duties there in Vietnam?
Well, the service club was meant to be a clean, homey place where they could get away from, you know, the barracks and all the noise and confusion of their everyday life, I think. And so they had, when they had downtime, they'd come and they could read. We had small libraries. We had magazines, newspapers. They could listen to music. They could play cards, pool, ping pong, or write letters home to the family. In those days, they didn't do a lot of letter writing. They had those tapes. I don't know if you remember, but reel-to-reel tapes that they would come in and check out recorders and send tapes home. So, and we also had movies that they could watch.
Kathleen, how many women in your program worked at each club?
Well, I think there were only about 600 women altogether of American women that were sent to Vietnam with Army Special Services. But there was supposed to be 3 in every club. There was supposed to be a director, a program director, and a recreation specialist. But like I said, there really, a lot of times there weren't enough women to staff all the clubs. So you were lucky if you had 2, and many times you were the only American woman on the post.
What was this like for you? Being that you probably worked a lot of hours and a lot of days, and as you mentioned, 7 days a week. What was this experience like for you? What kind of feelings did it give you?
It did get a little stressful for us sometimes because the hours were long. You got tired, and sometimes, you know, you heard stories from the guys that you really didn't want to hear, you know, because they were very frank. They'd come in and tell you exactly what had happened to them and what had happened to their buddies and what they did to the enemy, and sometimes it was a little hard to listen to, but our job was to be, you know, whenever possible, upbeat, and cheerful, and non-judgmental.
Was your location ever under mortar attack or small arms fire, or were you in the center of the base camp?
No, we got in Tay Ninh. You know, we were near the air base, so there was quite often they were trying to hit the base. You know, the actual airfield. So our hooch was right near the airfield, and we did have a sniper in Tay Ninh. He wasn't very good. Never hit anybody, but that was kind of scary because we'd have to go from the PhilCAG side to the American side for supplies, and he would take, you know, shots at you, but he never hit anything. And I remember asking the guys, why don't you just take care of him? You know where he is. And, oh, no. And they said, we don't want to do that. They might put somebody up there who can really hit something.
Okay.
That's a very good tactical decision.
That sounds pretty practical. That sounds like a good idea.
Absolutely. So we have some pictures that you've shared with us, and in one of the pictures, you're holding a little dog. So tell us about Chiquita.
Well, I found Chiquita under the desk one day. Usually when I go to work, I'd always take a broom and sweep under the desk because you never knew what was down there, bugs and snakes and things. And one day I felt this lump down there and I didn't know what it was, so I got the broom and I was sweeping it out. It turned out to be a little tiny puppy. And I don't know who put it there. One of the guys must have, but anyway, I adopted her, and she lived with me in Tay Ninh, and she traveled everywhere with me. And she was kind of a little runt. That's why I called her Chiquita, which means little. And she would travel everywhere with me on convoys. She'd get in a helicopter. She'd fly anywhere. So I had her for quite a while. Eventually, though, the post commander at my last station, it hadn't been long, rounded up all the dogs and had them killed. So I lost her there. But yeah, she was a good companion.
Kathleen, there's one of the photos is of you in looks like a fairly formal photo. You actually got white gloves and your cap on. Can you describe the circumstances there?
That was the first and last time I ever wore those. That was the day I left for Vietnam, and that was the way we were supposed to wear the uniform. But of course, in Vietnam, we didn't do that. So that was the only photo I have of me in the uniform, the way it's supposed to be worn.
Well, it's a nice shot. So during the course of the year, I'm sure there were difficult times. What was your most frightening experience during your service?
I think it was when I was threatened by an armed American soldier. He broke into my quarters and was threatening me, and luckily he got caught before he got to me, but it was quite frightening because he said at his court-martial, he said that the reason he had done it was that he figured that was the only way, by hurting an American woman, that he could get home. He figured they'd send him home to prison, which of course they didn't, but that was his reasoning, and it was a very frightening experience.
Okay, that does sound like a pretty difficult time. On the other side of it, what was the best experience during your tour?
Oh, I think it was just getting to know the people that you worked with, because you formed really lifelong friendships with them, you know, for the things that you experienced together. And also I loved working with the nuns and the children in the orphanages. That was always kind of the best part for me, because you could get away from, you know, your own work and your own stress.
How often did you visit an orphanage?
Well, would depend. If they were close by, we would go frequently, like once a week, and take whatever we could, you know, food or clothing, because a lot of times people at home would send clothing for the orphans, and we'd distribute the clothes, or we'd go to the mess hall and get fresh fruit, you know, to take to the children. So, you know, we'd go at least once a week. And we'd go with med caps usually, you know, the doctors and nurses would go out to the orphanages to take care of the kids, and then we'd go with them.
Kathleen, anything else that you want to share about your experience in Vietnam?
Yeah, I'd like to say that it was the best and the worst year of my life, really. I experienced the best of humanity and the worst, and it was really a life-threatening, well, not life-threatening, that wasn't the word I wanted to use, life-altering experience. I mean, I came home quite changed from the woman that I, you know, was before. But I have no regrets for having gone. I mean, we did the best that we could for the people who had to be there, and I'm proud of my experience there, my work there. And I'd do it again today if I could.
Well, Kathleen, thank you for sharing that. I served over there, never interacted with you personally, but the interactions I did have with you, some USO people, and occasionally a Red Cross girl were very significant. And on behalf of all the other veterans who were over there, thank you for what you did.
Well, what an incredible experience. And again, we have been joined by Kathleen Cordova, who served as a civilian with the Army Special Services. Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your service.
Well, thank you. Thank you for including me.
Tonight, we're honored to have a shadow box on our set from Vietnam veteran Jim Hill. Jim served with the Army's 25th Infantry Division in 3 Corps near Cu Chi during 66 and 67. Jim earned just about every patch that an infantry soldier can have, including Ranger, Airborne, and his proudest achievement, the Pathfinder patch. He also received a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. Jim, thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you for tuning in to Veterans Voices tonight. We wanted to leave you with a few events and resources.
The USO strengthens America's military service members by keeping them connected to family, home, and country throughout their service to the nation. To learn more, visit USO.org. Operation Creekside packs quality items with care for the troops and their families. They ship 50 care packages a month to deployed men and women of the U.S. military. To learn more, visit OperationCreekside.org. Blue Star Moms is a support through service organization in the San Francisco East Bay area, located in Danville, California, and also in Contra. They are moms who get together to share their devotion and to their sons and daughters currently serving in all branches of the armed forces of the United States, and our sons and daughters who are now veterans. To learn more, visit bluestarmoms.org.
To rewatch tonight's episode, check back on our homepage later this week, or check your cable provider's schedule for rebroadcast times. You can also rewatch this episode and many others on our YouTube channel, Veterans Voices of Contra Costa. So be sure to subscribe. Our next live broadcast will be Monday, February 18th at 7 p.m. Be sure to tune in. This is Veterans Voices of Contra Costa County signing off, wishing you all a relaxing evening. And for the veterans out there, remember, stay connected. Semper Fi, Hua, and Ura.